Hi folks, it's Rob Flux here with another Sunday session, and today we've got open mic night, and open mic night happens on the first Sunday of every month, and that's where you guys submit your questions in advance so that I can do a little bit of homework and the like. You do that by clicking on the link below, and I then give you, wax lyrical on all things property and property development for whatever the issue or challenge is that you've got going on in your community. Now, there's heaps happening at the moment, given that we are coming into the Christmas period. We've just been celebrating our Christmas party in Sydney, last weekend in Melbourne, and next weekend in Brisbane. So no matter where you are in the PDN community, we are celebrating with you. And I've got fantastic news in that if you are based in Adelaide, I can announce that we are coming your way. We're doing all the prep work at the moment to, get that ready. So if you are in Adelaide, if you know anyone in Adelaide, we are, getting everything ready. We've got staff members set up. We're trying to find venues. We're trying to find speakers, and we're coming your way in the not too distant future. So please, 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 if you are in Adelaide, please reach out to me or one of my friendly staff, and we will, have a chat about how you can get involved in that community. That said, a bucket load of questions this week. Sometimes we have a small amount, and sometimes we get a bucket load, and today we have a bucket load. And so I'm going to just get started with, the questions that we've got. So first question, it's a tiny little question from AJ, and AJ says, where do I start? Mate, that is a massive question. That's huge. So what is a good type of property to start developing first off, AJ asks. Mate, that is a really, really complicated question because firstly, legally, I can't give you any legal, accounting or financial advice. So I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you the kinds of questions that you need to ask yourself that will start to qualify what deals will actually work. So before saying that what the questions are, my guidance would be, look, there's lots of different property development strategies out there, and they all make money. Every single one of them make money. There's no issue or challenge about that. There's commercial, there's residential, there's industrial, there's rooming accommodation. There's, a bucket load of all sorts of things. There's subdivisions, there's townhouses, there's NDIS communities. There's all sorts of things like that. So they all make money, absolutely everyone, but only if you get very, very, very good at it. And so whatever your strategy is, you want to get good at it. That's the first part. The second part is you want to start to think about what kind of development strategy can I start small and then start to scale, okay? And when you start to do that, there's only really two development strategies that can scale. That is, how do I do a small version of something that then I can do a medium-sized version, then a large version, then a super large version. And those two development strategies are subdivisions and multi-res. Now, multi-res in itself has two categories. So there is townhouses and apartments, okay? So both of them, you can start small. You could do a 1:2 subdivision. You can do a duplex. You could do a 1:3, 1:4 subdivision. You can do a 1:3, 1:4 townhouse complex. You can start to scale your subdivision strategies all the way out to do entire suburbs, entire cities. And you can equally start to scale your townhouses to 50 townhouses, 100 townhouses, or you can start to do apartment complexes that go 20, 30, 50 stories into the sky. So they either scale out or they scale up. Either way, you start small, learn the lessons, get the benefits from those lessons, apply those in a slightly bigger project, and then go again. So my guidance, if you're going to look at anything, you want to look at something that is actually going to scale. And that way, whatever you learn today, you're going to reapply over and over and over. So where do I start? With a scalable strategy. That's the first part. The second part to that would be, which scalable strategy? Should it be townhouses? Should it be apartments? Should it be subdivisions? Which ones of those are going to be? And that's when you start to ask yourself the questions. So the questions are going to start to self-select which ones might actually work for you. So for example, how long can I wait for a payday? So if you need money and you need money fast, then if you're trying to do a townhouse project that's going to take you, probably anywhere from 6 to 12 months to learn the process, lock in the deal. They're going to run nearly 2 years to actually run the deal. You're going to be 3 years before you get your first payday. So if you need a payday now, that's probably not going to be the one for you. Okay. If, however, you want to do something like a subdivision process or even a smaller version of that, a splitter process, that's something you can get into much, much faster. You get a payday much, much quicker. But I guess the size of the payday is reflective to the cost of the project actually going in, because we work in development terms, we work on profit on costs. And if you've got a much smaller project, your costs are much smaller. Your profit on cost might be exactly the same, but because it's a smaller cost, the actual cash return is much smaller. So you might get a payday quicker, but your payday is going to be smaller. So if you are, I guess, not wanting to have lots of little small projects and instead you want to have a really big one, then you're going to go the opposite end of the scale, but you got to recognize you got to wait for that to actually happen. So question number one, how long can you actually wait? That's probably one of those questions. Second one is, well, how much skills have you got in the process? And more importantly, what is your risk appetite to actually do that? So if your risk appetite is high, you might, I guess, try to fast track your skills, start to learn them really, really quick, then try to apply those. So a townhouse type project or an apartment type project is going to be, I guess, one that if you've got, I guess, a higher risk appetite, because it's more money into the process, it's more effort to do, more skills to actually learn. If your risk appetite is really, really small, you might consider a townhouse let me rephrase that, stuff that one up completely. You might consider a subdivision process, because you can do that and exit as land. And so you don't have as much cost, you don't have much complexity, you're in and out of the market much, much quicker. You've got less exposure to the market because your project timeline takes less. So you're not getting in on one cycle and out on another. If your project is going to take 2 years or so, you might be going through 2 different phases of the market. So risks, I guess, in the townhouse project are a little bit higher. You've got construction cost risks, all those sorts of things. That said, you can do construction in subdivisions. You can actually build house and land packages. You can actually build the house as the finished product. So you can do lots of construction in there if you want to, I guess, lift up the complexity of the deal, add an extra little bit of cost. Again, profit on cost is going to stay very, very similar. Then you're going to start to I guess, reap more cash returns at the tail. But again, the project's going to take a little bit longer. If you need flexibility in your exit strategy because you don't quite know how you're going to be able to get out of it, then with a townhouse project or a apartment project, you can't build a single townhouse. You have to build all of them or you build none of them. So your exit strategies are not very flexible. You either sell it with a DA approval, in which case you're building none, or you're constructing everything in the complex. If, however, you do a land subdivision, then you've got lots of flexibility in how you exit. You might exit all of them as land. You might exit one as land. You might exit some as house and land. You might exit some as completed finished product. You might sell down some land, roll the cash over, and build on the remaining ones. There's lots of different flexibilities in that. So if you need flexibility of exit, you might want to consider that. If you, I guess, don't have a lot of cash and you want to start to consider, how do I actually get into some of these deals? You might need other people's money. You might need some creative acquisition strategies, those sorts of things. Then you might say, well, I've got only a certain amount of access to funding within my community, within my network of people. So given that, that might limit the deal constraint size and that sort of thing as well. So when you start asking yourself those questions, AJ, they're going to start to give you the insights into which one of those development strategies will just start to fall out, okay? So the first part is make sure that your development strategy is scalable. That way you can start small and then start to scale over time. Understand your risk appetite, your timelines, how much cash you've actually got to put in the deal, how much skills you got. But then based on that, you're going to choose development strategies. And based on knowing the development strategy, that's then going to help you to actually understand, well, where does that start to make sense, okay? So choosing the strategy is, where do I start, mate? That is the biggest mistake most people make. They go and do someone else's course, and then at the end of the course, they go, actually, that was a great course, but it doesn't really fit my circumstance, okay? And so because of that, I can't really apply that because it's not going to really fit my questions. So my personal circumstances, the risk and appetite and all those sorts of things. If, however, you choose the strategy first, then that then allows you to choose, well, which course is the one that's actually going to get me the outcome that I need. So you can then go and choose the exact course that's going to give you the outcome that you're actually looking for. So Hoping that helps, AJ. I know it's a very big question, mate. Seeing some of the other questions that are a little bit further into the pack, that might kind of give you some insights into the next phases that are coming up as well. So just, I guess, the other thing that I would say, mate, is make sure you come to one of our monthly events. As a matter of fact, I am going to give you the link to coming to our events. So if you want to come to these, we run these in Brisbane, Sydney, and Melbourne at the moment, and soon to be Adelaide. Most weekends of the year, mate. And so you can always participate either physically by physically turning up, or live stream to anywhere all the way around the country and actually start to participate in those. So super easy to actually get involved in that. And you're going to learn heaps just through that process. Now, next question from, I hope I'm saying this right, Zlata. She's, I don't know if it's a she or a he, so my humble apologies. Hi, Rob. Are call options and put and call options now subject to duties tax when they are exercised? So, Zlata, so firstly, just for everyone's benefit, I'm just going to talk about what an option contract is, then what a put and call option is. Otherwise, nobody will know what I'm actually talking about. And then I'll try to answer your question. So firstly, an option contract is something that is, from a legal perspective, has a legal definition. So that is the right, but not the obligation, to purchase a property at a predetermined price at a known point, on or before a known point in the future. So that is, you can effectively lay by a property. So you can put down a deposit. You can say, so long as I come back before that finish date and pay for it in full, I can actually take that property. Or I could not pay it out because I have the right but not the obligation to purchase, and I can walk away and just forfeit my option, so my option fee or the deposit. Okay, so that is an option contract. Now, there are two different kinds of option contracts. There's a call option and there's a put option. So a call option is a one-way option contract. That is where you, as the purchaser, would like to call on the other person to sell it to you. Okay, so that is a one-way transaction to say that you are going to be purchasing the property, or you might choose not to. The opposite of that is a put option. So that is where the seller forces you to buy it off them. So that is a put option. And then there is the combination of the two called a put and call option, where it's a two-way contract where typically there's a period of time where you get to call on them, and when that time expires, then there's a period of time where they get to force it on you. It does get a little bit messy and a little bit complicated, but the idea being that you can, I guess, control a property for a period of time to see if you can add value to the property through the development application process, what they call soft equity. And if you can lift that soft equity, quite often you can lift it up high enough that you can tap into that and, I guess, refinance that in order to, I guess, go into the next stage and do construction. Or alternatively, you might use that soft equity uplift to then on-sell that to somebody else. So that is what an option contract is. Back to your question, and that is it subject to a duties tax when exercised? So I think what you're referring to there is stamp duty. And the answer there is it depends on what state you are in. Now, I can't give you legal or accounting advice here, and I don't know what state you are actually in. But for the majority of states, the answer is no, okay? However, definitely in Victoria, there is a stamp duty implication for when you add value to the property through that, I guess, the development application process. And so you're going to have to pay stamp duty on the uplift of that, is my understanding of that. Okay, so if you are in Victoria, you must go and actually go and talk to your accountant as to what that is, and a solicitor, to make sure that you're actually not accidentally triggering that unnecessarily. For most other states, now I've not done deals in every single state, so I can't say categorically this, but certainly from my experiences in most other states, that doesn't apply. But I would highly recommend that, irrespective of where you are, you actually ask that question of your accountant at that time. So hope that helps, Zlata. Next question from Dijana. So Dijana says, if you had 800K in cash, what would you do with it? That's what I like to think of as a quality problem, Dijana. So the quality is, I've got cash. What am I going to do with it? So it really comes down to, I guess, some of those questions that we were talking to AJ about before, which is what's your risk appetite? How long can you afford the money to be out? What's your timeline? When do you need the cash returned? All those sorts of things. So all of those start to, go into the process. But the first thing that I would actually do is firstly work out, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to be a passive investor, in which case you could potentially invest in someone else's deal? Or do you want to be an active investor, which means that you're actually going to do the development yourself, in which case, if you're going to do that, invest a small portion of that in your own education, okay? Make sure you learn the skills irrespective of what you want to do. As a matter of fact, I would say if you go down either path, you should probably invest in your education, because if you are not able to assess somebody else's deal and determine the issues and challenges that are in that deal, then why would you be putting your money in? You're just trusting somebody that they're telling you the truth. Now, let me tell you, I have seen many, many people try to raise money in our community, and every single feasibility that they put in front of me, every single one of them, that spreadsheet says that this thing makes money, okay? Now, let me tell you that there are a number of them that is actually physically wrong. And that's because that person didn't actually understand what some of the inputs would be going into the feasibility. So anyone who comes to you and says, hey, I'd like you to invest, you need to be able to actually accurately assess whether what is on paper is factually correct. So can you determine every single issue and challenge that is sitting on that site, do the site analysis and go, hey, I can see all the problems here. I can look in the feasibility and can see for every problem, there is actually a line item and a cost associated with it. And that seems to make sense with regards to the order of magnitude of the problem. If you can do that, then you can be a passive investor safely, knowing that you're able to assess the deal really, really well. If you can't do that, then you're gambling that the other person is actually telling you the truth. So you want to be super careful in doing that. But if you want to be a passive investor, there are lots of different ways that you can actually invest. You could be just a money partner, so you could loan money into somebody's deal, in which case you might get anywhere from 10 to a 20% interest rate return. So that's somewhere between $80,000 and $160,000 passive return on that capital. That's a good return. That's enough for most people to become financially free and never actually have to work ever again. You'll need to assess deals and actually go and check them out from time to time. You may have to wait till the tail end of the project in order to get paid, because a lot of times the person asking for the funds is wanting to capitalize that. But it gives you a lot of options, okay? Or alternatively, you could learn the skills and you could actually go and do it yourself. And instead of getting a small portion being the interest rate, you could instead get all the cash returns by you doing it yourself. So that is a great way to do that. If I was going to invest at all, I would diversify the funds. So put the money into multiple projects. That way you're going to get multiple paydays at different times. So your cash is going to come back at different times. Plus you're de-risking yourself because of the fact that you've got money in many deals, which means that if one goes bad, you don't lose all your cash, and the others hopefully should come good. But whatever you're doing, Dejana, whatever you're doing, please, please, please make sure that you educate yourself and be able to assess the deal on its merits. That said, I'm going to say back yourself. Learn the process. If you're going to learn the process in order to do an investment, why don't you learn the process with a view to, hey, what if I was to actually do it myself? Okay. Now you might want to shadow someone. You might want to have a mentor sitting over your shoulder, that sort of thing, to de-risk it for your side. But if you're going to go to the effort of learning it, why aren't you doing it? Next question. So I hope that helps, Dejana. Next question from Sally. Sally says, hey, so glad I can ask my question to you directly. This is my first time. Smiley face. Hey, Sally, welcome aboard. So my question is, what is the best way for beginners to find the deals? Okay, so this is a little bit of a follow-up question for what AJ was asking a little bit earlier, but there's a couple of parts to this. There are a couple of different ways recommended. So letterbox drops, door knocking through the agent, etc. As I'm a beginner who has no experience and zero negotiation skills with full fear of speaking to strangers, what would you recommend to attack the deal hunting? Super good question, Sally. I'm going to say everything that I said to AJ right at the start and everything that I just said to Gianna, make sure that you actually understand how you can actually assess the deals. That is the first part. Now, there's a couple of different layers to this. So I'm going to break it down into a couple of different parts. So firstly, can you actually determine that it's a deal itself? Okay, so that's a little bit of education, a little bit of practice, a little bit of skills, those sorts of things to actually get into the deal. So if you can assess the deal, then when you go out to hunt for deals, there are two approaches. One is the shotgun approach. That is, you fire letters everywhere and carpet bomb the area, and then or you door knock on every single door, and you don't do any analysis up front, and then you wait for everybody to respond, and then you start analyzing the deals. Okay, so that's the carpet bomb approach or the shotgun approach. Now, the problem with that approach is that when the phone rings, you have no idea if it's an actual deal, and you have to assess the deal super, super quick. So you need to do your full suburb analysis, you need to do your full site analysis, you need to do full feasibilities, and all of that in a very, very quick amount of time in order to come back to them in a very timely manner. And you don't know if you've got a dud on your hand, okay? And you might get a dud for your very first call. You might get a dud for your very second call. You might get a dud for your third call. And finally, you get one that comes through that might actually be a deal. And of course, by this time, you're down and you're dejected because you've just keep answering these calls. You spent all this money on letterbox drops and all those sorts of things. And they've been duds so far. So why would this one be any different? And you don't put the effort in. Okay, so that's the danger of the carpet bombing approach. And it's super expensive. It's $1.10 a letter to actually send stuff out. So if you're doing that approach, wow, that can be expensive when you got 1,000 or 2,000 sites in an area and you've got no idea what actually a deal is. Okay, so the second approach, rather than the shotgun approach, is more the sniper. Okay, so the sniper is you're going to take your time and you're just going to cherry pick which ones you're actually going to send letters off to. Now, in this instance, you're going to put a lot of front-loaded effort in up front, okay? So the effort's going to happen either way, whether you do it at the tail end when people ring or at the front end. But by doing this, what you're going to do is you go, that's a dud, that's a dud, that's a dud. But you're able to do that in no time flat because you're going to start to, if you're following my formula, okay, you're going to become a subject strategy expert. You're going to become a council expert, and you're going to become an area expert. When you got all those three, then if you do that, then you can do a 10-minute check, literally just 10 minutes, folks. And with 10 minutes, you can say, that's a dud, that's a dud, that's a dud, that's okay. So what we're looking for is it developable? We're not looking so much at this point, is it profitable? We're just looking at, is it developable? And if we do that, you're going to find that at least 50% of the sites that you assess will not be developable. So you're not going to send any letters out to those. Instead, you're going to send letters to all the ones that are developable. Now, in this instance, when the phone rings, you know it's a deal. All you have to do is get it for the right price. And so you've already done the pre-work. Now you're going to do the detailed work, what in my methodology, the property development formula, we call that the rapid elimination method. We do the 10-minute check and then we do a 2-hour check. So we're going to go into a super detailed assessment. And at that point, we're ready to actually make offers on these things because we're a strategy expert, and because we are a council expert, and because we're an area expert. It does not take us long to do the full site analysis on these things. So if you do all of those things, you're going to be able to act really quick, and you know that every time the phone rings that it is hot and you're going to go. Now, that's assuming that you're sending letters, okay? And this comes back to, I guess, the second part of your question. So should you send letters? Should you door knock? Should you send agents to door knock? All those sorts of things. And here's my opinion to do, Sally. Do it all, okay? Because no matter how you actually reach out to someone, if you send them a letter, then there's a 50% chance that they are going to hate the fact that you have reached out to them directly, and they never want to deal with anyone direct, and they'll only ever deal with an agent. And if you send in an agent, there's a 50% chance that they're going to hate the agent, not want to pay agent's commission, and instead they'd prefer to deal with someone direct. And so what you need to do is you need to do both, okay? And on top of that, you also need to door knock. So you need to do all of them because you don't know which attack vector is going to be the one that actually activates that person with regards to wanting to sell. Now, a common scenario that I tend to see, okay, is you send a letter out, and what happens is Joe Public reads the letter, and they talk to Mr. or Mrs. Joe Public or Josephine Public, and they go, "Hey, somebody's interested in buying our property. What do you think we should do about that?" And they go, "Well, not really sure. We hadn't really thought about that." And they put it down on the letter down on the coffee table, something like that. About a week later, 2 weeks later, they go, maybe we should sell. Where did that letter go again? Oh, sorry, I put that in the recycle bin and I didn't think we were going to do anything with that. And they go, oh, I can't do anything. So now, while they wanted to, you've activated them, but there's nobody actually there to actually go and confirm on that. So no matter what, go and send a second letter 1 month later, 2 months later, whatever it is. Now, because you're only sending half as many letters, for the same amount of money that you would have done with the shotgun approach, you can actually send 2 letters, 3 letters to people, knowing that, and so you can do follow-ups. Hey, I sent you a letter last month, just wanting to see whether or not you've come to any decisions or anything like that. Okay, so it's much cheaper doing that approach. Plus, every time the phone rings, you know that thing's hot. So definitely do that. And then send an agent in as well, because if they hate the fact that you reached out, the agent is then going to, go and activate them. That's going to work as well. And lastly, go and do a door knock and go, hey, I sent you a letter. What do you reckon? Now, all 3 of those, no matter what the approach is, they're going to determine that one person they hate and the next person they love. What they don't know is that you are all 3 people, okay? And so they go, wow, there's lots of people interested in my property. I wonder whether or not we should actually be selling it. They don't know that all 3 people are you. So when they go back to the version of you that sent the letter and go, no, what are you offering for it? And you start to lowball them. They go, nah, that's no good. And then you go to the version of you that was door knocking and you lowball them. They go, no, that's no good. And when the agent starts lowballing them, all of a sudden they go, man, everybody's lowballing us. Maybe it's not worth much, right? So all of those little tips and tricks and that sort of thing, they're all going to help you to actually get there, okay? But no matter what, if you're going to send agents in, give some agents a couple of letters, a couple of properties, another agent, another couple of properties, another agent, another couple of properties, because you don't know which agent is the best agent. And the agent that gets the best results, send them into the area where the agent got the worst results and get them to double attack, right? So you might have assessed 200 properties in the area. You could give 10 properties to each agent. That's 20 agents that are actually out there doing hard work for you. So that way you leverage your time, that sort of thing, and you get plenty of results in actually doing that. And you get to test which agents are the ones that you want to buy through and which agents are the one you want to start to sell through. Okay, so super actually important that you do all of that. So hoping that helps, Sally. There's a whole bunch more tips and tricks and that sort of thing that I go into with my students in the Property Development Formula program with regards to how you write your letters and how to actually make sure that your letters actually get opened and a whole bunch of things like that. Okay, so if that's ever of interest, just reach out to the team and have a chat with how they go. Next question from Fiora. Fiora says, hi, Rob. I've just completed the online Queensland Developers Review Panel. Is there an indication if and when some of the recommendations will be implemented? So let's just talk about Fiora, and I'm just going to put a link up here. So the Developers Review Panel, the Queensland Building Construction Developer Review. This is something that I did a Sunday session on a couple of weeks ago, and this is a discussion paper that they have done, the Queensland government have done, based on a whole bunch of issues and challenges that industry at the larger end of town are actually having in the, building and construction area. And a lot of the ideas they've generated, and they've generated 38 separate ideas that they're wanting to, get our developers' feedback on. Some of those have the potential to completely decimate our industry as small scale and novice developers. And that is why the link down below, propdev.info/decimate, is going to give you some insights into what some of those things are and what is, the potential for those. So of the 38 initiatives, I have, distilled those down into 3 different categories. So the 3 different categories are the ones that I think are potentially going to decimate our industry. And I've said, what is the panel saying, or what is the review paper or discussion paper saying? what is, I guess, my position on that? So why do I think that's potentially a real bad deal killer for us? And then lastly, there's an area for you to actually put your answer into your own words, what you would like to give the feedback to that panel about. Then there's a second category, which is, hey, these are pretty important things. So there's 10 in that first category, by the way. There's 10 potential deal killers that are going to kill our industry. So really super important that you guys actually get onto this. The next category is, look, these are important issues, but it's important that there's a balanced conversation. Look, I'm actually supportive in many instances of the fact that some of these areas need to be cleaned up, but we need to make sure that there's a balance between what the builder needs, what the developer needs, what the financier needs, all those sorts of things. So I guess it's important that we actually have our say and have a balanced and fair viewpoint. I don't think it's going to decimate our industry, but it can and will change how we work. So super important that we actually do that. And there's about 12 in that category. And then lastly, there is the balance of the 38. And those are mostly benign. They are ones that I think won't have a huge impact to our industry. Really good ideas, really good initiatives. You may want to have some insights into those as well. So what we've done is we've tried to give you some insights into how to actually answer those. Please, 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 if you are a small scale property developer in Queensland at all, even if you're in, I guess, other areas, these changes, if they are implemented inside Queensland, this has the potential to actually become legislation. And if it does, that means that other states will potentially follow suit. So we're going to be super careful that we all contribute, because if we don't contribute into this conversation, what's going to happen is that our voice won't be heard. And then we'll wonder why, we'll whinge and bitch and complain that all this legislation came in that nobody had any input into. So now is your time, folks, okay? Now, the submissions for that close on the 16th of December, okay? So we are at the 4th of December today. So we've got 12 days left. So go to that page. I've got a copy of the Sunday session where I go into every single one of the issues. I've got a copy of the discussion paper, and then I've got the survey response that we are guiding you through to say, look, this is how we've actually distilled this down. So it's the one place to go where you're going to get all the information to actually make that happen. So please, please, please do that. After that, what's going to happen is the review panel is then going to review all of the submissions, and I'm hoping that there is going to be a bucket load of those. They're going to review all those submissions, and in the early new year, they're going to start to make some recommendations based on the feedback from the industry as to what they should actually do with that. Now, this is super important, folks, because so far, all of the input that created these 38 initiatives have come from the industry itself. So industry associations, so Urban Development Institute Australia, HIA, Master Builders, I guess the Property Council, some unions, a whole bunch, the finance industry, so, but all at the big end of town and all where there is, I guess, a representation for the industry. The problem is that as small scale developers, we don't have representation. And so if you don't do something, this is why I've stepped in, Property Developer Network have stepped in to say, look, there is no representation. There is no industry body looking after small scale developers. So I'm taking on the mantle to help you guys fight this fight. So please, 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 please have your say. It is super, super important. Now, that was the rant. Back to the question. So the question was, when do we think there's going to be some recommendations? As I said, 16th of December is the submission. Then the early new year, I think they'll actually have reviewed those. And then I'm going to say probably Q2 of next year, they'll actually start to be saying, look, this is the legislation that we recommend actually coming through. So we're not far away, folks. Do something about that. Super, super important. Anyway, end of rant. Next question. So Fiora has a follow-on question. And the follow-on question says, I'm considering signing up to the Property Development Formula course, but worried about choosing Brisbane. I understand capital cities are the preferable due to population growth, but have there been many students that have successfully completed profitable deals in regional areas? And if so, what towns? I live on the border of New South Wales and Queensland. Okay, so let me try to rephrase that. Let's ignore the fact that you want to sign up to the program because I don't think that's relevant to your question. love the fact that you do. Please, happy to have that chat. But the real question is, should you be developing in regional areas or should you be developing in major metropolis or metropolitan areas? This is a factor of risk, okay? So there are development opportunities everywhere, okay? So you can make money all the way around the country. I've got no issue or challenge at all with regards to that. But it doesn't matter how well you identify that it's developable. It doesn't matter how well you identify that it's profitable. It doesn't matter how perfectly you get the feasibility right. It doesn't matter how perfectly you run the project and get the project to run on time and on budget. If you do not sell it at the end, you never get paid, okay? And the only way you're actually going to sell it at the end is actually have a market that is willing to take that on and have enough demand on your product to actually make that worthwhile. So I want to be super clear and super strong on that particular message, because a lot of people concentrate on just the skills in how to do it, but they don't actually determine should they do it, okay? So 90% of development sites, 90, that are developable are not profitable, and it's because of the fact that there is not enough demand to take on the risk. So some simple things that you can actually start to do here is actually, firstly, understand what the baseline population is of the town that you're actually starting from. There are going to be some towns that have 2,000 people. There are going to be some towns that have 20,000 people. There's going to be some towns that have 200,000 people and some towns that have 2 million people. Now, if there are 2 million people versus 2,000 people, the same percentage growth rate, okay? So a 2% growth rate on 2,000 people is 4 people. That's not a lot, okay? But you have the same on 2 million people, that's 40,000 people. So the number of people coming into the area means that there's a lot more demand actually wanting to actually take on that stock, okay? So before you kind of choose an area, you want to actually understand, firstly, what is the baseline population? Then what is the population growth rate? And that's going to tell you how many people are moving into the area every single year. When you understand the population growth rate, that will tell you how many people. Then, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, 2.6 people live in every household. So if there's 1,000 people moving into the area, divide that by 2.6, and that will tell you how many actual dwellings need to be created. Okay. Now, when you start to look at that, you can then have a look at the supply in the area and go, well, is there enough supply to meet the demand? Is there too much supply? Is there not enough supply? So what you're wanting is some competitive tension there. So if there's not enough supply and there's plenty of demand, then it's going to push the prices up. If it's the other way around, it's going to push the prices down. Now, if you don't need to create many properties in the first place, it is very easy to have oversupply. Okay, so when you're starting to become an area expert, when you're starting to do the research in the area to say, you know, who else has done development applications and, you know, how many approvals are actually sitting there dormant, all those sorts of things, it's going to start to give you some insights in that. Now, the last part of your question was, which towns does this work in? Now, that's one of those ones where I'm never going to answer that one. I'm really, really sorry, because if I said, hey, go to this town, then everybody flocks to that town, and then you blow that town up because there wasn't much population growth in the first place, and all of you go in there one area and you all create too much supply at the same time, you blow it up. And so instead, if you do the homework, you'll work that out for yourself and you know that it's safe. So I do have some good regional towns where people have been doing developments and getting some really good money. So it is absolutely possible. But my guidance would be, if you're starting to do more regional, anything below 200,000 people as a baseline population starts to get a little bit shady from my side, and I'm not overly comfortable in looking at deals in those areas because the growth rate just doesn't create enough demand on the process. Hope that helps. Dan's got a question. So Dan is one of my current students. So welcome, Dan. Thank you. He says, hi, Rob. Been looking for 1:2 subdivisions. I have noticed that there is potential to do a 1:3 or a 1:4 subdivision in a council that I've previously rejected. Should I undertake doing a rough cut FISO? That's a particular tool inside my property development formula program on those 1 into 3s and 1 into 4 subdivisions, even though there is not a lot of historical examples. Okay, let me just give you some insights for everyone who's not a student. So that's a very internal question, Dan. So I'm going to give some insights into everybody else so they actually understand. One of the things that we encourage our students to do is actually find evidence of other people having done this before. And what we want to do is we want to duplicate and mimic what someone else has done. We want to just cookie cutter what they've done and prove, A, that there's lots of opportunities, and B, that someone else has done it before us, and C, that those other people that did it before us were actually profitable. And lastly, is the demand still there to make sure that that is going to happen again when we do that? So what Dan is saying is, look, he's identified lots of opportunities, but he can't find enough historical examples of people having done this. So Dan, this is a little bit of an advanced answer, and I'm more than happy to go into that on Monday's mentoring call when we get there tomorrow night. But just at a very high level, just to give some insights into everybody else, the finished product, the land or the house on that smaller block of land, the examples that you had for the 1 into 2s are still sufficient for that because it's the same product, just there's more of them. So that in itself isn't an issue. It's really the examples of the raw site that's actually the challenge, is trying to find examples of that raw site. Now you can do what they call interpolate. Now, so interpolate is where you don't have enough examples, but you can see a trend. So one piece of information plus another piece of information plus a third piece of information can start to draw a trend line. So you can actually say, well, how many 1 into 2s are there? How many 1 into 3s are there? How many 1 into 4s are there? How many 1 into 5s? And you start to build a trend line to say, well, what's the purchase price of that actually likely to be? And that's going to give you the averaging that you're actually talking about. Now that's super advanced, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to use multiple sample sets to actually infer the answer. And then we're going to sanity check that by going, well, what does a brand new home sell for? And then reverse engineer that to say, well, if we know what the brand new home selling for, subtract the profit we want to make from that, subtract the cost of the developable home, subtract the development costs, and underneath that should be what the baseline land should have actually been worth. So we can actually kind of work that from multiple angles in order to get that answer. Hoping that helps, mate. But Monday night, I'm more than happy to go into that in a little bit more detail. Next question, and the last question comes from Paul. So Paul says, hi, Rob. Do you think there will ever come a time where there is simply too many developers in the market vying for properties? With the amount of education courses and mentorships available, which is great, of course, is what he says, it seems that there will be a large increase in the number of small-time developers competing for development sites. Do you think there will ever be a time where development is unviable because of too much competition? So, Paul, that is a phenomenal question, mate, and a really great question. And it's one that I actually asked myself when I started my journey way back. And at the time, the response that I got was I thought was, oh, I can't believe that's the answer. Of course, he's going to tell me that I should do property development because he's selling me a course. Why would he tell me anything otherwise? Because it's in his best interest to make sure that I actually do the program, right? Now, having done that and believed it and bought into the program and then run it and now been doing this for 12 plus years, let me tell you, they were right. On average, we are looking at somewhere between 350 and 400,000 people in Australia population growth every single year, which means that there's a lot of homes that need to be created. Remember, I said before, 2.6 people in every single home. So I'm just going to bring up a little calculator in the background. And if I said 400,000 people divided by 2.6, that is 154,000 new homes needed every single year. Okay. Now, 154,000 new homes across the country. Most of those are going to be in 4 locations: Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and Perth. They are going to take the majority of those homes. They're going to take about 80% of those, okay? So when we start to look at that and we look at the population growths of each of those areas, 154,000 homes, we go, well, how many developers, if we just did a 1 into 2, for example, that's 76,000 developers that actually need to actually do this. Most development programs are doing 20, 30, 50 people inside a course. Some of the big guys that are doing huge marketing are getting 200 or 300 people in a course, and good on them, but they're not getting any results out of that. So, but the guys that are more boutique and more smaller, those guys tend to get a lot more results because they're giving a little bit more care and nurture to their students. But that's 76,000 developers. There's no way that we'll ever get there. Just the sheer maths says it's not humanly possible. Now, even if we were all doing 6-packs, if I divide that by 6, that'd be 25,000 developers that we'd actually need creating those deals. So we'll never get there, mate. It's one of those things that mathematically, I don't think physically we can actually get to that level of saturation. We need the small guys, we need the big guys, we need small infill developments, we need the larger development cycles, we need the whole lot. So in short, no, I don't think we'll ever get there at all. Now, that said, I can see a couple of people on the chat are actually asking some questions. Andrew says, hey, Rob, your diligence to encouraging and informing people is amazing. Thank you for all you do. Thank you, Andrew. Smiley face. Love to you, mate. Let me see if there's any other questions out there in Facebook land. Give me 2 secs while I navigate to their page. So we run these out on 3 different channels. We do LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. So I'm going to try and grab them from some other questions from some of the other places. So 2 secs. And what questions can I see there? Actually, there's no other questions. You guys are very, very quiet today. So given that's the case, I might actually call that quits. So thank you, everybody. It's been great. If you are based in Brisbane, we have our Christmas party next weekend, and it's a little bit different to some of the other states because being just a week and a bit before Christmas, we're actually going to have a genuine Christmas party and no actual event. And because it's a genuine Christmas party, you need to bring the presents. So your attendance fee will be bringing a Secret Santa present. We're going to play some fun and games. I'm going to put some alcohol over the bar, some food, some drinks, that sort of thing, and we're going to have a bucket load of fun. So if you want to come to that and you are based in Brisbane, just go to our events page and register there. We can't wait to see you there. Until then, folks, I cannot wait to see you at our next upcoming meetups in the early new year or on our next Sunday session next weekend. So till then, folks, bye for now. Bye.